As the most important factory that produces iPhones for Apple, Foxconn in Zhengzhou, Henan province, used to manufacture over 50% of the world's iPhones. But now, it's not as prosperous as it used to be. Recently, many people have uploaded videos showing that the factory is empty and quiet, with very few people around. This is a sharp contrast to the bustling crowds of workers who used to show up to work every day. Nearby upstream and downstream supply chain businesses and industries have also been affected. Videos show that about half of the stores around Foxconn in Zhengzhou are now closed, and the employee dormitory areas are also deserted and run down. The person who filmed the video said, "Foxconn hasn't even moved out yet, and the business is already like this. If they really leave, how can we continue to do business?" According to data, Foxconn has nearly 90 production lines and employs over 300,000 people in Zhengzhou. Foxconn not only brings employment and tax revenue to Zhengzhou, but its import and export value also accounts for almost 80% of the city's total import and export value, 60% of the entire Henan provinces, and nearly one-third of China's mobile phone industry chain export value. So Foxconn's economic contribution is extremely important to the province of Henan. Now, as Apple's supply chain shifts to Southeast Asia, Foxconn is following suit and continuously announcing investments to build factories in India and Vietnam. It is said that due to a decrease in orders, Foxconn in Zhengzhou stopped hiring 2 months ago and will lay off over 10,000 employees. The Shenzhen Longhua Foxconn factory has also been affected. Starting from March, Longhua Foxconn gave employees a few months-long vacation due to no orders. Foxconn operated in mainland China for several decades and has established factories in cities such as Zhengzhou, Chengdu, Foshan, and Shenzhen, accumulating more than 800,000 employees in mainland China. In previous years, Foxconn faced numerous protests from employees due to serious overtime work and monotonous assembly line jobs that bored young workers. In particular, in October last year, the Foxconn factory in Zhengzhou experienced a large-scale COVID outbreak, and many workers staged a shocking physical escape on foot due to dissatisfaction with the anti-epidemic measures in the factory and concerns about being infected. This move not only seriously affected Foxconn's production, but also caused dissatisfaction from the founder of Foxconn's parent company, Taiwan's Honghai Precision's Terry Gou. This may also be one of the reasons why they decided to accelerate the relocation to India. Changshuo Technology Shanghai Co. Ltd. Is the second largest Apple supplier factory after Foxconn, and also the largest Apple supplier factory in Shanghai, with over 80,000 employees at its peak, and currently at around 70,000 employees. It ranked second in the top 100 foreign investment enterprises in Shanghai for 2021 for both import and export trade. However, due to Apple's continuous reduction of orders, Changshuo stopped hiring since November last year, and a large number of employees are now leaving. In addition, according to Reuters, Changshuo's parent company, Pegatron, plans to open a second factory in India to continue diversifying its investment and production operations outside of China. Since the start of the US-China trade war in 2017, Apple began a de-Sinicization process of its supply chain. In recent years, due to the impact of COVID-19 and China's strict zero-COVID policy affecting business production, Apple has accelerated its shift towards India and Southeast Asian countries to reduce its reliance on a single supplier. Out of Apple's more than 150 global supply chains, China accounts for over 50, involving thousands of companies and millions of employees. As one of the top controllers of this ecosystem, Apple's decision can change the fate of millions of Chinese workers. TMT Post, the largest and most influential financial and technology information service provider in China, selected 12 A-share listed Chinese companies as representatives of Apple's supply chain and analyzed their performance from 2012 to 2022. According to data from Wind, a Chinese financial data and analytics company headquartered in Shanghai, in the past decade since 2012, these 12 companies in Apple's supply chain have achieved rapid growth in both annual revenue and net profit. The total revenue of the 12 listed companies increased from 33.895 billion RMB in 2012 to 595.678 billion in 2022, a growth rate of 1,657%. The total net profit of the 12 companies increased from 3.287 billion to 27.397 billion RMB, a growth rate of 734%. Apple has boosted the growth of its supply chain companies, but it has also made them heavily reliant on the tech giant, which can lead to serious consequences if Apple cancels orders or shifts its supply chain. For example, Luxshare Precision, based in Shenzhen and known as the top dog in the Apple supply chain among Chinese companies, mainly manufactures AirPods for Apple. In 2021, 74% of the company's revenue came from Apple. The high reliance on Apple has increased its business risks. In recent years, due to Apple canceling orders, Luxshare's market value has decreased by more than 250 billion RMB compared to 2020. This is just the beginning, and Luxshare's tough times may still lie ahead. Of course, the ones who are suffering the most are the migrant workers who have lost their jobs. As we mentioned in a previous video, there has been a trend of migrant workers returning to their hometowns in cities like Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Shanghai, and Beijing, and this trend continues. Some workers in Shenzhen still remain, but with no income, they can only find shelter on the streets, under awnings, or in tunnels to protect themselves from wind and rain. However, even these meager shelters have been taken away from them. Recently, a video has been circulating showing that instead of providing assistance, the Shenzhen municipal government has installed sprinklers under the very awnings and tunnels where these poor, homeless workers seek refuge, in order to drive them away. In fact, not only Apple, but also other well-known American brands are putting pressure on their suppliers, who currently rely on Chinese factories, hoping to explore the possibility of transferring their production lines to countries like India and Vietnam. The withdrawal of large factories like Foxconn has also affected a large number of upstream and downstream companies. They either follow these large factories to set up new plants in Southeast Asian countries or go bankrupt, and these companies are closely related to China's foreign trade import and export. In addition, with the sharp decline in orders from Europe and the United States, other industries such as mechanical and electrical products and clothing exports are also deeply affected. This has led to the bankruptcy and closure of a large number of enterprises that mainly rely on foreign trade. Due to China's sluggish foreign trade exports, a large number of empty containers are piled up in ports, which also reflects the international market's attitude about China's future export capabilities. In order to quell public debate, the Director General of China's Customs Administration, Yu Jianhua, claimed that a large number of empty containers are ready and waiting in the ports. However, skeptical netizens ridiculed, saying that having stacked empty containers in a port but calling it ready and waiting is truly an art of word choice. Especially in Guangdong Province, China's largest province in foreign trade, there has been a drastic decline in foreign trade. According to data released by the Guangdong branch of the General Administration of Customs on March 24th, the total value of Guangdong's import and export trade in the first 2 months of this year was 1,087.28 billion RMB, a decrease of 12.4% compared with the same period last year. Among them, exports were 707.38 billion RMB, a year-on-year decrease of 10.4%. Exports to the United States saw the biggest decline of 24.1%. Looking at the situation of key commodity export values, in the first 2 months of this year, the export value of mechanical and electrical products, household appliances, mobile phones, and clothing and apparel accessories decreased by 10.5%, 14.4%, 14.9%, and 30.3% respectively. Analysis by relevant experts shows that the reason for the decline in Guangdong's exports in the first 2 months is due to the fact that Guangdong's main export markets are Europe and the United States. So it is most affected by the impact of weak consumer demand in those countries. On the other hand, labor-intensive industries are also shifting overseas. At present, Chinese foreign trade enterprises face 2 even greater challenges. One is that under the geopolitical tension between China and the United States, the decoupling of China and the United States will accelerate. And the other is that China's developing country status and most favored nation treatment will soon be stripped by the United States. According to the owner of a major lithium battery manufacturing company, many foreign customers are concerned about the decoupling of China and the US, and would only give orders if they have factories located outside of China. If they do not have factories outside of China by 2025 at the latest, they may not place orders anymore. This has forced him to inspect and establish a factory in Vietnam. He mentioned that before the COVID-19 pandemic, customers had also mentioned overseas factories, but now they are genuinely having this requirement. He is also seeing Korean and Japanese companies withdrawing. There are many Chinese companies in similar situations. On March 27th, the U.S. House of Representatives unanimously passed the PRC is not a Developing Country Act. The bill requires the U.S. State Department to exert influence on international organizations to reclassify China as a developed country, to ensure that China cannot enjoy preferential treatment as a developing country on the international stage. On March 21st, Republican Senator Josh Hawley also proposed a bill called the Ending Normal Trade Relations with China Act, which aims to revoke China's most favored nation status and treatment. On October 10, 2000, then U.S. President Bill Clinton officially signed the Permanent Normal Trade Relations with China Act, officially recognizing China's most favored nation status. Under the preferential policies granted by the U.S., China not only broke through tariff and non-tariff barriers to exports to the U.S., but also enjoyed special treatment such as technology transfer, foreign trade structure reform, intellectual property protection, and market access. Hawley pointed out that providing China with the most favored nation status has resulted in the loss of 3.7 million manufacturing jobs in the U.S. and has damaged local economies. If these 2 proposals are passed, China's special treatment, such as receiving funding from international organizations and reduced tariffs in trade with the U.S., will be terminated, which will undoubtedly deal a fatal blow to China's foreign trade industry. In addition, with the U.S. ban on Chinese semiconductors, the Netherlands and Japan are also following suit. On March 31st, Japan's Minister of Economy, Trade and Industry, Yasutoshi Nishimura, announced that Japan will restrict the export of 23 types of semiconductor manufacturing equipment, taking effect in July this year. This also means that Chinese companies will no longer be able to obtain these crucial semiconductor manufacturing equipment. In the near future, if you live in Europe or America, you may notice that when you pick up a product, there is no longer a Made in China label, but instead it may be replaced by labels from Vietnam, India, Cambodia, and other Southeast Asian countries.